There's a quiet exhaustion most people carry. It doesn't come from working hard. It comes from working endlessly and still feeling like nothing is building. You wake up, you move, you push, you trade hours for money, and at the end of the day, everything resets. Again and again and again. Like pouring water into a bucket with a hole at the bottom. You're not lazy. You're not unfocused. You're just trapped in a system that was never designed to free you. And here's the truth that changes everything. If your income depends on your presence, your freedom has a ceiling. In this audiobook, Systems That Make Money for You, you're going to discover how to break that ceiling permanently. Not with hype, not with shortcuts, but with structure. You will learn how to shift from effort to architecture, from labor to leverage, from chasing money to designing systems that generate it. We will walk through 25 chapters together. You'll understand why most people stay stuck even when they work hard. You'll learn how systems quietly outperform motivation. You'll see how time, once your biggest limitation, becomes your greatest multiplier, and most importantly, you'll begin to think like someone whose income grows, even when they rest. This is not financial advice. This is education, awareness, perspective, a blueprint for thinking differently about how value is created in the modern world. And here's a line I want you to remember. You don't escape the rat race by running faster. You escape it by building something that runs without you. If that hits you, stay with me, because what you're about to hear may completely change how you see work, money, and your future. And by the time we reach the final chapter, you won't just want more income, you'll want systems. But before we build anything, we need to face something most people avoid, because the real problem isn't lack of money. It's the way we've been trained to earn it. Chapter 1. Stop renting your life. Most people never realize they are renting their own time. They think they are earning. They think they are progressing. But what they're really doing is leasing their life hour by hour to the highest bidder. And the moment they stop, the income stops. That's not ownership. That's dependency. Think about it. Every hour you work, you get paid once, and then it's over. That hour is gone forever. No residue, no continuation, no system, just a transaction. This is the trap described over and over in different forms of self-development philosophy. The idea that if your income stops when you stop, you're not free. But here's where it gets deeper. The problem isn't that you work. The problem is what your work creates. Does your effort disappear the moment you finish, or does it continue producing value after you're gone? Because that is the dividing line, not between rich and poor, but between linear income and exponential income. Linear income is tied to time. Exponential income is tied to systems. And most people never make that shift, not because they can't, but because no one ever showed them how. They were taught to perform, not to build, to complete tasks, not to design machines, to survive, not to scale. So they become efficient, they become reliable, they become valuable employees, but they never become owners of systems. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The world does not reward effort as much as it rewards leverage. You can work harder than everyone around you and still stay stuck. Because effort alone does not multiply. Only systems do. And systems don't care how you feel. They don't need motivation. They don't get tired. They don't take breaks. They simply execute again and again, exactly as designed. That's why one system can outperform years of hard work. Let me show you something simple, Imagine two people. The first person works 10 hours a day, every day, consistently, reliably. The second person spends months building something slow at first, something that barely pays in the beginning, a digital product, an automated service, a process that runs without them. At first, the first person looks successful. They're earning, they're moving, they're active. The second person looks behind, quiet, uncertain, invisible. But then something shifts. The system starts producing, small at first, then consistent, then scalable. And suddenly, the second person is earning while sleeping, while resting, while living. And the first person, still trading time, still resetting every day, still starting from zero every morning. This is the difference between activity and architecture, between motion and momentum, between earning money and building something that earns for you. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think systems are complicated. They think they need money, experience, connections. But the truth is, a system is simply something that works without your constant involvement. That's it. It could be a skill turned into a product, a process turned into automation, a piece of content that keeps generating value, a business model that operates beyond your presence. Simple, but powerful. Because once something works without you, you've separated income from time. And once that happens, everything changes. Your stress changes. Your decisions change. Your future changes. Because now, you're not just working for today. You're building something that keeps working tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. This is where real freedom begins. Not when you stop working, but when your work starts working without you. Pause for a second. Ask yourself honestly, if you stopped working today, how long would your income last? A week? A month? Or would it disappear instantly? Don't judge the answer, just see it clearly. Because clarity is where change begins. And in the next chapter, we're going to break down the silent force behind every system that generates wealth, a force most people ignore. But the wealthy design their entire lives around. Leverage. And once you understand it, you'll never look at effort the same way again. Chapter 2. Leverage is the invisible engine. There is a reason some people seem to move slower, but go further. There is a reason others work harder, but stay in the same place. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's not even intelligence. It's leverage. Leverage is the invisible force behind every system that creates real, lasting income. And once you understand it, you stop asking, how can I work more? You start asking, how can I multiply what I already do? Because leverage is not about doing more. It's about making what you do count more. Most people live in a world of one-to-one exchange, 1 hour worked, 1 unit of money earned. That's it. No expansion, no multiplication, no scale. But leverage breaks that rule. Leverage allows one action to produce multiple results. It allows 1 hour to echo into days, weeks, even years of value. It turns effort into output that doesn't stop. And here's the key insight. Leverage is what separates income from time. Without leverage, you are the system. With leverage, you build systems. Let's make this real. There are 4 primary forms of leverage in the modern world: time, people, capital, technology. And the most powerful one today is technology. Because technology allows you to replicate your effort infinitely at near zero cost. Think about it. A video recorded once can be watched millions of times. A digital product created once can be sold forever. An automated system built once can operate every single day without your involvement. That's leverage. That's scale. That's freedom. But most people never use it. Why? Because they're too busy surviving, too busy reacting, too busy staying inside the loop of immediate income. They don't have the space to think long-term, and without long-term thinking, you never build systems. You only maintain cycles. This is why leverage feels uncomfortable at first, because it requires delayed gratification. It requires working on something that doesn't pay immediately. It requires trust in a process that is invisible in the beginning. And most people can't tolerate that silence. They want results now. They want proof now. They want income now. So they stay in the loop, work, get paid, repeat. But the people who break out, they think differently. They understand something most people don't. The fastest way to grow is to build something that grows without you. That means stepping back. That means designing before doing. That means asking a different kind of question. Instead of, what should I do today to make money? You ask, what can I build today that will keep making money tomorrow? That one shift changes everything, because now you're not chasing income. You're designing sources. You're creating systems. You're building leverage into your life. Let's go deeper. Leverage is not just about money. It's about control. Control over your time. Control over your energy. Control over your decisions. When you have no leverage, you react. When you have leverage, you choose. And choice is the real definition of freedom. But here's where people get stuck. They hear about leverage, they get inspired, they understand the concept, but they never apply it because they think it has to be big. They think it has to be perfect. They think they need a full plan before they start. That's not true. Leverage starts small. It starts with one simple idea. Do something once. That keeps working. That's it. It could be writing something valuable that continues to reach people, recording something helpful that keeps being consumed, building something useful that solves a problem repeatedly, automating something repetitive so it runs without you. Simple, but powerful. Because once you experience even a small form of leverage, you can't go back. You start seeing everything differently. You start noticing where your time is being wasted. You start questioning every task. You start asking, can this be repeated without me? Can this be automated? Can this be turned into something that lasts? And that's when the shift happens. You stop being the worker. You become the architect. And architects don't think in hours. They think in systems. Now let me give you a moment of honesty. Building leverage is not easy. It requires discipline. It requires patience. It requires doing work that nobody sees at first. It's the kind of effort described in many growth philosophies, where the real transformation happens quietly, without applause, without recognition. Because systems are built in silence. While others are busy showing, you are building. While others are chasing, you are designing. And that silence, that's where your advantage grows. Because one day, what you built quietly starts working loudly. And when that happens, people will ask you how you did it. They'll think it was fast. They'll think it was lucky. They'll think it was easy. But you'll know the truth. You didn't work harder. You built smarter. And in the next chapter, we're going to go even deeper, because understanding leverage is one thing, but applying it requires something most people struggle with every single day. Focus. Not motivation, not inspiration. Focus. The kind that cuts through distraction and builds something real. And once you master that, you don't just start systems, you finish them. Chapter 3. Focus is the gatekeeper of every system. You don't fail to build systems because you're incapable. You fail because your attention is scattered, pulled in 10 directions, split across notifications, consumed by urgency instead of guided by intention. And here's the truth most people avoid. You cannot build anything that lasts with a distracted mind. Because systems require depth, and depth requires focus. Look around. We live in a world engineered to break your attention. Short videos, endless scrolling, constant alerts, noise disguised as opportunity. Every second, something is competing for your focus, and most people lose that battle every day, not because they're weak, but because they never trained their attention. They never learned how to protect it, and without protection, your time leaks, your energy fragments, your ideas stay unfinished. That's why so many people start things but never complete them. Courses left halfway, projects abandoned, plans forgotten, not because they didn't care, but because they couldn't stay with it long enough. And here's the connection most people miss. Every unfinished idea is a system that never got the chance to exist. Think about that. Every time you quit early, you don't just lose progress, you lose potential income, potential freedom, potential leverage. Because systems are built through consistency, not bursts, not motivation. Consistency, the kind that shows up when it's boring, the kind that continues when it's unclear, the kind that doesn't need excitement to move forward. And that kind of consistency is only possible when your focus is strong. So let's break this down. Focus is not just about avoiding distractions. It's about choosing what deserves your attention. It's about deciding what matters enough to finish. Because in the world of systems, starting is easy, finishing is rare, and finishing is where everything happens. This is why many high performers follow a simple internal rule. If it doesn't move the system forward, it doesn't get priority. Not urgent tasks, not random ideas, not distractions disguised as opportunities. Only what builds, only what compounds, only what lasts. Now let's get practical. How do you build focus in a world designed to destroy it? You start by reducing noise, not completely, but intentionally. You create pockets of time where your attention is protected, no notifications, no interruptions, no switching tasks. Just one thing, one direction, one system being built. Because deep work creates deep results, and shallow attention creates shallow outcomes. This is where most people struggle. They try to multitask. They try to do everything at once. They jump between ideas, and they mistake movement for progress. But movement is not progress. Busyness is not building. And activity is not creation. Creation requires stillness. It requires staying with something long enough for it to take shape. And that's uncomfortable, because your mind will resist. It will look for easier things. It will crave stimulation. It will try to escape the effort. That's normal. But here's the difference. Most people obey that impulse. Focused people override it. They stay. They continue. They build. Even when it's slow. Even when it's unclear. Even when there's no immediate reward. And that's why they win. Because they finish what others abandon. Let me give you a simple perspective shift. Instead of asking, how do I stay motivated? Ask, how do I stay focused long enough to finish? Because motivation fades, but focus can be trained. It becomes a skill, a muscle, and once you build it, everything changes. You complete more, you create more, you build faster, you waste less time, and most importantly, you start turning ideas into systems. This is why some of the most powerful transformations happen quietly, without announcements, without validation, without anyone noticing, just like it's described in many growth principles. The real progress is built in silence, far away from attention. Because while the world is distracted, you are constructing something real. And that construction is your edge. Now here's something important. Focus alone is not enough. You can be focused and still build the wrong thing. You can be consistent and still move in the wrong direction. That's why the next step is critical. Because once you have focus, you need clarity. Clarity on what kind of system actually makes money. Clarity on what creates value in today's world. Clarity on what people will pay for, again and again. And in the next chapter, we're going to break that down. Because not all systems are equal. Some drain your time, some trap your energy, and some set you free. Dear friend, you are definitely on the right track if you're watching this video. Like, subscribe, and write in the comments which topic or problem concerns you the most. We promise to prepare a professional video explanation at your request. Chapter 4. Not all systems make money. This is where most people waste years. They finally decide to build something. They get focused. They put in the time. They stay consistent. And then nothing. No income, no growth, no momentum, not because they failed, but because they built the wrong kind of system. Let's be clear, not every system creates money. Some systems create activity. Some create attention. Some create distraction disguised as progress. But only a few create income that continues. And if you don't understand the difference, you can stay busy for years without ever becoming free. So let's strip this down to something simple. A system that makes money must do one thing. It must solve a problem repeatedly, without needing you every time. That's it. No complexity, no hype, just value, delivered consistently through a structure that runs. Think about it. Why do people pay for anything? Because it solves something, saves time, reduces pain, increases results, creates convenience, delivers clarity. If your system doesn't do one of those, it won't generate income, it might look good, it might feel productive, but it won't sustain. Now here's where most people go wrong. They build based on what they want, not what is needed. They create for themselves, not for the market. They follow excitement, not demand. And excitement fades, but demand compounds. This is why clarity matters. Because once you understand what people actually need, you stop guessing. You start building with direction. Let me give you a simple framework. Every profitable system sits at the intersection of three things: skill, demand, scalability. Skill means you can deliver value. Demand means people want that value. Scalability means it can be delivered repeatedly without you. If you're missing one, the system breaks. Skill without demand, no one buys. Demand without skill, you can't deliver. Skill and demand without scalability, you're stuck trading time again. All three must exist. And once they do, you don't just have work. You have a system. Now let's talk about something deeper. Most people overcomplicate this. They think they need something revolutionary, something new, something never seen before. But the truth is, you don't need to reinvent. You need to refine. Most successful systems are not new ideas. They are better executions of existing ones, simpler, faster, clearer, more accessible. Because people don't pay for novelty, they pay for results. So instead of asking, what new idea can I create? Ask, what problem already exists that I can solve better? That question is powerful because it grounds you, it removes ego, it aligns you with reality, and systems built on reality last. Now, here's something important. Your first system doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to scale globally. It doesn't need to be massive. It just needs to work. It needs to solve something consistently. Because once it works, you can improve it. You can expand it. You can automate more of it. But you can't improve something that doesn't exist. And this is where most people hesitate. They wait for clarity. They wait for confidence. They wait for the perfect idea. And while they wait, time moves, opportunities pass, and nothing gets built. But clarity doesn't come before action. It comes through action. Just like it's often emphasized in growth philosophies, progress begins when you move, not when you feel ready. You refine as you go. You learn as you build. You adjust as reality responds. That's how systems are created, not in theory, in motion. Now let me give you a perspective that might shift everything. You don't need one perfect system. You need one working system, because once you have one, you understand the process. You see the pattern, you gain confidence, and then you can build more. Different systems, different streams, different structures, all working together, all compounding, and that's when something powerful happens. You stop depending on one source, you start building a network of systems, each producing, each supporting, each scaling, and suddenly your income is no longer fragile, it's layered, resilient, expandable. That's the goal, not one big breakthrough, but multiple systems, quietly working in the background. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what problem do I understand deeply? What have I experienced, learned, improved, solved? Because your first system often comes from your own journey, something you figured out that others are still struggling with. That's where value begins. And in the next chapter, we're going to take this even further, because knowing what to build is one thing, but building it requires something most people avoid: discipline. Not the kind that feels good, but the kind that shows up, especially when it doesn't. And that's where real systems are born. Chapter 5. Discipline builds what motivation abandons. There will be days you feel unstoppable, clear, focused, driven. Ideas flow, energy is high, everything feels possible. And then there will be days you feel nothing, no clarity, no motivation, no desire to continue. And that's where most people stop. Not because they lack potential, but because they relied on a feeling that was never meant to last. Let's get something straight. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the engine. And systems? Systems are built by engines, not sparks. If you only work when you feel like it, you will never build anything that lasts. Because consistency doesn't come from emotion. It comes from decision. A decision you make again and again and again. Especially when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's boring. Especially when no one is watching. This is where the real separation happens. Not between talented and untalented, but between those who follow feelings and those who follow structure. Because structure doesn't care how you feel, it doesn't ask for permission, it simply requires execution. And execution creates results. Now let's go deeper. Discipline is not about forcing yourself forever. It's about creating a system of behavior that reduces resistance. Because the truth is, you don't need to fight yourself every day. You need to design your environment so the right actions become easier. That's how discipline becomes sustainable, not through pressure, through design. Let me explain. If your phone is always within reach, distraction is inevitable. If your workspace is chaotic, focus becomes difficult. If your schedule is undefined, consistency disappears. But if you control those variables, everything changes. You don't rely on willpower, you rely on structure. And structure removes friction. That's the key. Because building systems already requires effort. You can't afford to waste energy fighting unnecessary battles. So you simplify, you remove obstacles, you make the right action, the default action, and suddenly, discipline feels less like force and more like flow. But here's the part most people don't want to hear. Even with the best system, there will still be resistance. There will still be moments where your mind says, "Not today, later." You deserve a break. And that's when discipline matters most. Not when it's easy, but when it's uncomfortable. Because every time you act despite resistance, you strengthen something inside you. You build identity. You become someone who finishes, and that identity is more powerful than any strategy. Because once you see yourself as someone who follows through, you stop negotiating with excuses. You stop delaying. You stop abandoning what matters. And that's when systems start to form. Because systems are not built in perfect conditions. They are built in imperfect ones. Through repetition, through persistence, through discipline. Just like it's described in many principles of growth. Real progress happens when you act even when you don't feel ready. Now let me give you a perspective shift. Instead of asking, "How do I stay disciplined forever?" Ask, "How do I make it impossible to avoid the work?" Because that's the real game. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your systems. And if your system is weak, your results will be inconsistent. But if your system is strong, your results become inevitable, even on bad days, even when you're tired, even when motivation disappears. That's the power of discipline. It removes randomness. It replaces hope with certainty. And certainty is what allows systems to grow. Now imagine this. You show up every day, not perfectly, but consistently. You build a little more, refine a little more, improve a little more. At first, nothing seems to happen. But then, momentum builds. Your system starts working. Small results appear. Then consistent results. Then scalable results. And suddenly, what once required effort now runs with less and less of it. That's when you realize something powerful. Discipline didn't trap you. It freed you because it helped you build something that no longer depends on constant effort. And that's the goal. Not to work forever, but to work long enough to create something that doesn't require you forever. Pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, where in your life are you relying on motivation instead of building discipline? Where are you starting but not finishing? Where are you waiting instead of executing? Because those answers point directly to the systems you haven't built yet. And in the next chapter, We're going to take this even further because discipline helps you build. But there's something even more powerful, something that turns small actions into massive outcomes over time, compounding. And once you understand that, you stop chasing fast results and start building unstoppable ones. Chapter 6. Compounding is quiet until it isn't. Most people quit too early, not because they're incapable, but because they misunderstand how progress actually works. They expect results to be immediate, linear, visible. They expect effort to equal outcome right away. But that's not how real growth works. That's not how systems grow. That's not how wealth is built. Real progress is exponential, but it starts invisibly. And if you don't understand that, you will abandon the very thing that was about to change your life. Let's break this down. Compounding is simple in theory. Small actions, repeated consistently, creating larger and larger results over time. But in reality, it feels frustrating because in the beginning, nothing seems to happen. You show up, you build, you improve, and the results? Minimal, almost invisible. And this is the phase where most people quit because they mistake silence for failure. But silence is not failure. Silence is the foundation. Think about planting a seed. You don't see growth immediately. You don't see roots forming. You don't see the structure developing beneath the surface. But that doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is happening where you can't see it. And systems work the same way. In the beginning, you are building roots, skills improving, processes refining, structures forming. It's quiet, it's slow, it's uncertain. But it's necessary, because without strong roots, there is no lasting growth. Now here's where compounding becomes powerful. At some point, the invisible becomes visible. The system starts producing, not dramatically, not explosively, but consistently. And consistency is where momentum begins. Because once something works, even at a small level, you can build on it. You can improve it, you can scale it, and suddenly, the same effort starts producing more, then even more, then even more. And that's when compounding accelerates, not because you worked harder, but because what you built started working for you. This is why patience is not optional. It's required, because compounding punishes impatience and rewards persistence. Now let's connect this to your life. Every day you delay building, you delay compounding. Every day you hesitate, you push results further into the future. But every day you act, even in small ways, you move the system forward. And those small movements add up. That's the part most people underestimate. They think small actions don't matter. But small actions, repeated daily, create massive outcomes over time. Just like it's often said in growth principles, consistency, even in simple actions, builds results that eventually become undeniable. Now let me give you a powerful shift. Stop asking, how fast can I succeed? Start asking, how long can I stay consistent? Because speed is unpredictable, but consistency is controllable. And consistency feeds compounding. Now imagine this. You build something today. It produces a small result. Tomorrow, you improve it. It produces slightly more. Next week, you refine it again. More output. Next month, more. Next year, significantly more. Not because of one big breakthrough, but because of continuous improvement. That's compounding. And when combined with systems, it becomes unstoppable. Because now, you're not just working. You're building something that grows, even when you're not actively pushing it. That's when everything changes. Your mindset shifts. You stop chasing immediate rewards. You start valuing long-term outcomes. You stop reacting to daily fluctuations. You focus on building structures that last. And that's when you separate from the majority. Because most people live in short-term thinking. Daily income, daily problems, daily reactions. But systems thinkers, they operate differently. They think in months, years, decades. They build for the future while others chase the present. And that difference creates everything. Now here's something important. Compounding works both ways, positive and negative. If you build consistently, you grow. If you delay consistently, you fall behind. If you focus consistently, you improve. If you distract consistently, you stagnate. Every action compounds. Every decision accumulates. So the question is not, is compounding happening? The question is, in which direction is it working for you? Because whether you realize it or not, you are always compounding something, habits, skills, results, systems, or lack of them. So choose carefully, because time will amplify whatever you build. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what am I doing daily that will still matter a year from now? What am I building that continues even when I stop? Because those answers reveal the direction of your compounding. And in the next chapter, we're going to take this even deeper, because once you understand compounding, you need to protect it from distractions, from noise, from unnecessary complexity, and that's where simplicity becomes power, because the most effective systems are not complicated, they are clear. And clarity is what allows systems to scale. Mate, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 7. Simplicity scales. Complexity breaks. There is a hidden mistake that destroys more systems than failure ever does. It's not laziness. It's not lack of discipline. It's not even lack of knowledge. It's complexity. Most people don't fail because they didn't try. They fail because they built something too complicated to sustain. Too many steps, too many moving parts, too many decisions required every single day, and eventually it collapses. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, through inconsistency, through overwhelm, through exhaustion. And here's the truth you need to understand. If your system depends on constant effort, it is not a system. It is a burden. Real systems reduce effort over time. They simplify, they streamline, they remove friction. Because the goal is not to prove how hard you can work. The goal is to make results easier to repeat. Let's break this down. Every system has two phases, creation and operation. Creation requires effort, focus, energy, discipline. But operation should feel lighter, more automatic, more predictable. If your system still feels heavy after it's built, something is wrong. Because a true system becomes easier to run the longer it exists, not harder. Now here's where most people go wrong. They try to build something impressive, something complex, something that looks advanced. But complexity does not equal effectiveness. In fact, complexity often hides inefficiency, because the more steps involved, the more chances for failure, the more decisions required, the more opportunities for delay. The more moving parts, the more fragile the system becomes, and fragile systems don't last. Simple ones do, because simplicity creates clarity, and clarity creates consistency, and consistency creates results. So instead of asking, how can I build something big? Ask, how can I build something simple that works every time? That question changes everything, because now you're focused on reliability. Repeatability, sustainability, the foundations of every successful system. Let me give you an example. Imagine a system that requires you to check 5 platforms, manage multiple tools, make constant decisions, adjust every day. It might work for a while, but eventually it drains you. Now compare that to a system that runs on one clear process, requires minimal input, operates predictably, improves gradually. That system lasts because it respects your energy, and energy is one of your most valuable resources. This is something most people overlook. They think time is the only limit, but energy matters just as much. Because without energy, you don't execute. Without execution, systems don't grow. So protecting your energy is part of building systems, and simplicity is how you do it. Now let's go deeper. Simplicity is not about doing less. It's about removing what doesn't matter. It's about focusing only on what creates results. Because most of what you do doesn't actually move things forward. It just feels productive. But real productivity is not about activity. It's about impact. And impact comes from clarity. This is why strong systems often look almost boring, repetitive, predictable, consistent, because they're optimized. They don't waste motion. They don't rely on constant creativity. They just execute efficiently, again and again. That's where scale comes from, not from doing more things, but from doing the right things better. Now here's something important. Simplicity requires discipline, because your mind will try to complicate things. It will look for new ideas, new tools, new strategies. And while exploration is useful, constant switching is not. Because every time you switch, you reset progress. You lose momentum. You break the compounding effect. And that's why simplicity wins. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you focused. It keeps your system moving forward, even when everything else is pulling you away. Now let me give you a powerful principle. If you can't explain your system simply, you can't scale it, because scale requires clarity, not just for you, but for anyone or anything that interacts with your system. And if it's unclear, it won't grow. So simplify, refine, remove. Focus only on what works, and let go of what doesn't, even if it feels hard, even if it feels like you're losing something. Because what you're actually doing is making space for what matters. Now pause for a moment. Look at your current efforts. Where are you overcomplicating things? Where are you adding unnecessary steps? Where are you making things harder than they need to be? Because those are the areas where your system is breaking, and once you simplify them, everything becomes easier, more consistent, more scalable, more powerful. And in the next chapter, we're going to take this even further, because once your system is simple, you can begin to multiply it, not just run one system, but build multiple systems, working together. And that's when income stops being a single stream and becomes an ecosystem. Chapter 8, Build once, multiply forever. Most people think in single streams, one job, one income, one source, and because of that, they live in constant pressure. If that one stream slows down, everything shakes. If that one source disappears, everything stops. That's not stability, that's exposure. And here's the shift you need to make. Real freedom doesn't come from one system. It comes from multiple systems working together. Because when you build more than one, you stop depending, you start expanding, you create layers, and layers create security. Let's break this down. Imagine your income as a table. If that table has one leg, It doesn't matter how strong that leg is, it's unstable. One disruption and everything collapses. But if that table has multiple legs, now it stands. Now it holds weight. Now it becomes reliable. That's what multiple systems do. They support each other. They reduce risk. They increase opportunity. And most importantly, they multiply your results. Because here's something powerful. Systems don't just add, they compound together. One system feeds another. One output creates another opportunity. One structure strengthens the entire network. And suddenly, you're not just earning from one place, you're earning from many. Quietly, consistently, simultaneously. Now here's where people get confused. They think they need to build everything at once. Multiple systems, multiple ideas, multiple projects. That's a mistake. Because without focus, you build nothing. Remember what we learned. Finish one system first. Make it work. Make it stable. Make it repeatable. Then you expand. Because once you understand how to build one, you can replicate the process. And replication is where multiplication begins. Let's go deeper. When you build your first system, you learn how to identify value, how to structure delivery, how to create consistency, how to improve over time. That knowledge becomes your blueprint. And with a blueprint, you don't start from zero anymore. You build faster, smarter, more efficiently. And that's how multiple systems are created. Not randomly, but intentionally. Now imagine this. You have one system generating income. It's stable. It's predictable. It's running. Now you build a second, different but aligned, then a third, then a fourth, and suddenly your income is no longer tied to one outcome. It's distributed. And distribution creates resilience. Because if one system slows down, the others continue. If one changes, the others support. And your life becomes less reactive, more controlled, more stable. That's the goal. Not just growth, but stability within growth. Now let's take this even further. Multiple systems don't just protect you. They expand your potential. Because each system opens new doors, new audiences, new opportunities, new directions. And sometimes one system becomes the gateway to something bigger, something unexpected, something exponential. But that only happens if you build, if you finish, if you expand. Now here's something important. More systems doesn't mean more chaos. It means more structure. Because each system should be simple, clear, manageable. That's how they work together. Without overwhelming you, without draining you, without pulling you in different directions. This is why simplicity matters so much. Because when each system is clear, the entire ecosystem becomes powerful. Now let me give you a principle. Don't chase more work. Build more systems. Because work consumes time. Systems create time. Work demands effort. Systems reduce effort. Work is linear. Systems are exponential. And once you understand that, you stop trying to do everything yourself. You start designing things that don't require you. That's the shift. From operator to architect, from worker to builder, from income to systems. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, if I had one system working today, what would my life look like? Less pressure, more freedom, more clarity. Now imagine having 3, 5, 10, all working, all producing, all supporting your life. That's not unrealistic. That's design. But it starts with one, always one, built properly, finished fully, refined consistently, then multiplied. And in the next chapter, we're going to go deeper into something that silently destroys people before they ever build their second system. Overthinking. Because ideas are not the problem, execution is. And overthinking kills execution before it even begins. Chapter 9. Overthinking is expensive. There is a silent habit that destroys more potential than failure ever will. It doesn't look dangerous. It doesn't feel risky. In fact, it often feels responsible. Planning, analyzing, preparing, overthinking. And here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Overthinking is not intelligence. It's hesitation disguised as control. Because while you're thinking, nothing is being built. No system is created, no value is delivered, no progress is made, just mental loops, endless cycles of what if. And every cycle delays your future. Let's go deeper. Overthinking comes from one place, fear. Fear of making the wrong move, fear of wasting time, fear of failure, fear of judgment. So your mind tries to protect you. It tells you to wait, to think more, to plan better, to be sure. But here's the problem. Clarity does not come from thinking alone. It comes from action. You don't figure things out before you start. You figure things out because you start. That's the shift. Because systems are not built in your head. They are built in reality, through trial, through feedback, through adjustment, and none of that happens until you move. Now here's where overthinking becomes dangerous. It creates the illusion of progress. You feel like you're working. You feel like you're improving. You feel like you're getting closer. But nothing has actually changed. And time keeps moving. This is exactly how people stay stuck for years. Not because they didn't try, but because they never executed. And execution is the only thing that creates results. Now let's be clear. Thinking is important. Planning matters, but only to a point. Because beyond that point, it becomes delay. And delay kills momentum. Let me give you a simple rule. Think enough to start. Then let action teach you the rest. Because action reveals what thinking never can. What works, what doesn't, what needs improvement. Reality gives you feedback. Your mind gives you assumptions. And systems are built on reality, not assumptions. Now let's connect this to your life. How many ideas have you had that never became anything? How many plans did you start but never finish? How many times did you say, "I'll start when I'm ready," and then never did? That's overthinking, and it's expensive, not just in time, but in opportunity. Because every idea you delay is a system you never built. Every plan you postpone is income you never created. Every moment you hesitate is momentum you lose. And momentum is everything. Because once you start moving, things begin to align. Clarity increases, confidence grows, direction improves. But none of that happens if you stay still. Now here's something powerful. The people who build systems are not the ones who think the most. They are the ones who act the most. Not recklessly, not blindly, but consistently. They make decisions. They test ideas. They adjust quickly, and they move forward. While others are still thinking, they are building. And that difference creates everything. Just like it's often emphasized in growth principles, progress belongs to those who act, not those who wait for perfect conditions. Now let me give you a perspective shift. Instead of asking, "What if this doesn't work?" ask, "What if I never try?" Because one leads to learning, the other leads to regret, and regret lasts longer than failure ever will. Now imagine this. You take one idea. You stop overthinking. You start building. It's not perfect. It's not clear, but it's moving. you learn, you adjust, you improve, and over time, that one idea becomes something real, something functional, something that works. That's how systems are built, not in perfection, in progression. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, where am I overthinking instead of acting? What have I delayed that I could start today? What system exists in my mind but not in my life? Because those answers point directly to your next step. And in the next chapter, we're going to go deeper into something that holds people back even after they start: perfection. Because starting imperfectly will always outperform waiting perfectly. Dear viewer, share your success story, even if it is small. It can motivate other people to visit the comment section and read it, and it can inspire them. Also, don't be shy about asking questions, and perhaps someone with more experience or someone who has been through this will share the answer. Remember, it is only through communication that people become stronger and better. Thank you. Chapter 10. Perfection is the enemy of systems. There is another trap that looks like discipline, but quietly destroys progress. It sounds responsible, it feels intelligent, it even looks productive from the outside, but inside, it's holding you back. Perfection. And here's the truth you need to understand. Perfection does not build systems. It delays them. Because while you're trying to make something perfect, you're not making it real. You're adjusting, tweaking, polishing endlessly. And while you do that, nothing is being tested. Nothing is being used. Nothing is producing results. Let's break this down. Perfection is rooted in fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. So your mind tells you, just improve it a little more, just wait until it's ready. Just make it better before you show it. But here's the problem. Ready never comes. Because there is always something to improve, always something to fix, always something to adjust. And if you follow that loop, you will never release, never launch, never build anything that actually works in the real world. Now here's the shift. Systems are not built through perfection. They are built through iteration. You start, you release, you learn, you improve, and you repeat. That's it. That's the process. Simple, but powerful. Because every time you release something imperfect, you gain something perfection can never give you. Feedback, real feedback, from real people, in real conditions. And that feedback is what shapes your system into something valuable. Not your assumptions, not your theories, reality. Now think about this. Would you rather spend 6 months building something perfect that nobody uses, or build something simple in 1 week that people actually interact with and improve it over time? The answer is obvious, because systems are not about appearance. They are about function. They are about solving problems. And problems don't care if your system is perfect. They care if it works. Now here's where perfection becomes dangerous. It disguises itself as progress. You feel like you're moving forward. You feel like you're improving. You feel like you're getting closer. But in reality, you're standing still. Because progress is not preparation. Progress is execution. And execution requires release. Now let's go deeper. Perfection also kills speed. And speed matters. Not rushed speed, but responsive speed, the ability to act, adjust, improve quickly. Because the faster you can test ideas, the faster you can build systems that work. But perfection slows everything down. It creates hesitation. it creates doubt. It creates delay, and delay breaks momentum. And without momentum, nothing grows. Now here's something powerful. The people who build systems successfully do not wait for perfect conditions. They create momentum first, then refine along the way. They understand something most people don't. Your first version is not your final version. It's your starting point. And starting points are supposed to be imperfect, because that's how growth happens. Through adjustment, through improvement, through iteration. Just like it's often emphasized in growth principles, clarity and confidence come after action, not before it. Now let me give you a simple rule. If it works, release it. If it doesn't, improve it, but never hold it forever, because holding kills progress, and progress is what builds systems. Now imagine this. You take an idea. You don't overthink it. You don't perfect it. You build a simple version. You release it. It's not amazing, but it works. You get feedback. You improve it. It gets better. You refine it again. It gets stronger. And over time, that imperfect beginning becomes something powerful, something valuable, something that produces. That's the process. Not perfection, progression. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, where am I waiting for perfect? Instead of building something real, what have I been preparing for that I could release today? What system is stuck in development instead of working in reality? Because those answers show you exactly where you're holding yourself back. And once you let go of perfection, you unlock speed, you unlock growth, you unlock systems. And in the next chapter, we're going to go even deeper, because once you start building, you need to understand how to protect your time, because time is the raw material of every system you will ever create. And if you don't control it, you will never control your output. Chapter 11. Time is the raw material of wealth. You don't build systems with money first. You build them with time. Time is the first investment. Time is the foundation. Time is the currency you spend before money ever comes back. And here's the truth most people never fully accept. If you don't control your time, you cannot build anything that lasts, because systems require focused time, not leftover time, not distracted time, not exhausted time, focused time. And most people, they don't have it, not because they lack hours, but because their hours are already claimed by work, by distractions, by habits that don't build anything. And when everything else takes priority, nothing meaningful gets created. Let's break this down. Every system you will ever build comes from time invested up front, time spent learning, time spent creating, time spent refining, and that time does not pay immediately. That's the part that makes it difficult. Because you're working without instant reward. You're building without visible results. You're investing without guaranteed return. And most people can't tolerate that. So they stay in immediate income, immediate feedback, immediate comfort. But immediate never compounds. Only invested time does. Now here's the shift. You don't need more time. You need to reclaim it, because you already have it. It's just being spent on things that don't build your future, scrolling, reacting, repeating routines that lead nowhere, and every hour lost there is an hour not invested in systems. This is why awareness is powerful, because once you see where your time goes, you can change it, you can redirect it, you can reclaim it, and that's where everything begins. Let me give you a simple perspective. An hour is a mirror. It reflects what you value. If your hours go to consumption, you build nothing. If your hours go to creation, you build something. And over time, those choices define your life. Now let's go deeper. You don't need 8 hours a day. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need unlimited time. You need consistency. Even one focused hour every day can change everything. Because 1 hour invested daily becomes 365 hours a year. 365 hours of building. 365 hours of refining. 365 hours of creating something that didn't exist before. That's how systems begin. Not in massive bursts, but in consistent blocks. Just like it's often emphasized in growth principles. Even 1 hour used intentionally each day can transform your direction completely. Now imagine this. You dedicate 1 hour a day to building a system. At first, it's slow, unclear, messy, but you stay consistent day after day, week after week, month after month. And slowly, something takes shape, something real, something functional, and eventually, something that produces. That's the power of time invested correctly. Now here's something important. Protecting your time is not about doing more, it's about doing less of what doesn't matter. Because most of your day is filled with things that don't move you forward, and if you don't remove them, they will consume your potential. So you become intentional. You decide what deserves your time, what doesn't. And once you make that decision, you act on it. You reduce distractions. You limit noise. You create space. Because space is where systems are built. Now let me give you a principle. If it doesn't build your future, it shouldn't dominate your time. That doesn't mean you eliminate everything. It means you prioritize correctly. Because time is limited, and every choice has a cost. So choose wisely. Now let's connect this back to systems. Every system you build is a result of time invested in the right direction. And once that system is built, it starts giving time back. That's the exchange. You invest time now. To gain time later, you sacrifice in the present. To create freedom in the future, and that's a trade most people never make. Because they're too focused on today, too focused on immediate needs, too focused on short-term comfort. But systems thinkers, they think differently. They are willing to invest time without immediate reward because they understand something powerful. Time invested in systems becomes time returned with interest. That's how you escape the cycle. That's how you break dependency. That's how you build something that works without you. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, where is my time going every day? What am I investing in that actually builds something? What am I doing that keeps me stuck in the same place? Because those answers reveal everything. They show you why things are not changing. And they show you exactly where to start. Now here's the transition. Once you reclaim your time and start investing it, you'll notice something. Your environment matters. The people around you, the habits around you, the energy around you, because even if you have time, the wrong environment will pull you back. And in the next chapter, we're going to break that down because systems don't grow in chaos. They grow in environments designed for them. And once you understand that, you stop fighting your surroundings and start shaping them. Chapter 12. Your environment is either building you or breaking you. You can have the right idea. You can have the right plan. You can even have the time, and still, you won't build anything that lasts. Why? Because of your environment. And here's the truth most people overlook. You don't rise above your environment. You adapt to it, quietly, daily, automatically. The people around you, the habits around you, the expectations around you, they shape your behavior more than your intentions ever will. So if your environment is not aligned with your goals, you will constantly feel resistance. You will start and stop, push and pull back, build and then lose momentum. Not because you're weak, but because your surroundings are stronger than your discipline. Let's break this down. Every environment sends signals. Signals about what is normal, what is expected, what is acceptable, and over time, you begin to match those signals. If you're surrounded by distraction, you become distracted. If you're surrounded by inconsistency, you become inconsistent. If you're surrounded by people who don't build, you stop building, not consciously, but gradually. And that's how potential disappears, not in one moment, but over time. Now here's the shift. If you want to build systems, you must design your environment to support that behavior, not fight against it, support it. Because when your environment aligns with your goals, everything becomes easier. Focus becomes natural. Discipline becomes lighter. Consistency becomes automatic. And that's when systems grow. Let's go deeper. There are 3 environments you must control: your physical environment, your digital environment, your social environment. Each one matters. Each one influences you. Each one can either support your growth or destroy it. Start with your physical environment. Where do you work? Where do you think? Where do you build? Is it clean? Is it focused? Is it designed for creation? Or is it chaotic, distracting, filled with noise? Because your surroundings affect your mind. Clarity outside creates clarity inside. So simplify your space, remove what doesn't matter. Create a place where your mind can focus, where your system can grow. Now your digital environment. This is where most people lose, because your phone is not neutral. It's designed to capture your attention, to keep you scrolling, to keep you consuming, to keep you distracted. And every minute you spend there is a minute not invested in building. So you must become intentional. What apps do you use? What content do you consume? What notifications interrupt you? Because if you don't control it, it will control you. And systems cannot grow in a distracted mind. Now your social environment. This one is powerful because people influence you more than you realize. Their mindset, their habits, their expectations, they shape your standards. If the people around you don't value growth, you will struggle to grow. If they don't build, you will struggle to build, not because you can't, but because you're constantly being pulled back. This is why many people feel stuck. They're trying to change in an environment that reinforces the same patterns, and that's exhausting. So what do? You don't necessarily remove people, but you become aware. You limit influence. You protect your direction. You surround yourself, even digitally, with people who build, who think long-term, who value systems, because influence matters, and the right influence accelerates everything. Now here's something important. You don't need a perfect environment. You need a supportive one that reduces friction, one that makes building easier, one that aligns with your goals. Because when your environment supports your behavior, you don't rely on willpower, you rely on structure, and structure creates consistency. Now let me give you a principle. If your environment makes it hard to build, change the environment. not the goal. Because your goal is valid, your vision is real, but your surroundings might not support it yet. And that's something you can control. Now imagine this. You wake up. Your space is clear. Your distractions are minimized. Your time is protected. Your focus is directed. And you begin building, not with resistance, but with flow. Day after day, consistently and slowly, your system takes shape. Because nothing is pulling you away, nothing is draining your energy, nothing is breaking your rhythm. That's the power of environment. It removes unnecessary struggle and allows your effort to actually compound. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what in my environment is helping me build? What is holding me back? What can I change today to make progress easier? Because those answers are the adjustments that unlock your next level. And in the next chapter, we're going to go deeper. Because once your environment supports you, you need to master something even more powerful, your identity. Because the way you see yourself determines what you build and what you never even attempt. Chapter 13, you don't build systems. You become the person who does. There is something deeper than strategy, deeper than discipline, deeper than focus, deeper than time. And it determines everything, your identity. Because at the end of the day, you don't rise to the level of your ideas. You fall to the level of who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who tries, you will try and stop. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you will struggle, even when opportunity is in front of you. If you see yourself as someone who can't, you won't even begin. But if you see yourself as a builder, everything changes. Because builders don't wait. Builders don't overthink. Builders don't depend on perfect conditions. Builders create. That's what they do. That's who they are. And identity is what makes behavior consistent. Let's go deeper. Most people focus on what they do, tasks, actions, habits. But what they miss is that behavior follows identity, not the other way around. You don't wake up and force yourself forever. You become someone for whom those actions are normal. That's when consistency becomes natural. That's when discipline becomes automatic. That's when systems actually get built. Now here's the shift. Stop asking, what do I need to do? Start asking, who do I need to become? Because doing without becoming doesn't last, but becoming changes everything. Let me explain. A person who sees themselves as inconsistent will find ways to be inconsistent. Even if they try to improve, a person who sees themselves as distracted will return to distraction, even if they focus temporarily. But a person who sees themselves as disciplined acts differently, decides differently, builds differently, because their identity supports their behavior, and behavior creates systems. Now here's something powerful. Identity is not fixed. It's built. Through repetition, through decisions, through evidence. Every time you act in a certain way, you reinforce a version of yourself. You cast a vote for that identity. So if you want to become someone who builds systems, you must act like that person. Before you feel like that person. Before you believe it fully. Because belief follows evidence, and evidence comes from action. This is why small actions matter so much, because they shape identity. Every time you show up, you become more consistent. Every time you build, you become more capable. Every time you follow through, you become more reliable. And over time, those actions accumulate. They form a new self-image, a new standard, a new identity. And once that identity is established, everything becomes easier because now you're not forcing yourself to build. You're simply being who you are, just like it's often emphasized in personal growth principles. You don't wait to feel ready, you act, and through action, you become. Now let's connect this to systems. Systems require consistency. Consistency requires discipline. Discipline requires identity. So if your identity is weak, your systems will be weak. But if your identity is strong, your systems become inevitable. That's the connection. That's the foundation. Now here's where most people struggle. They try to change everything at once. New habits, new routines, new goals. And it overwhelms them because identity doesn't shift instantly. It evolves gradually through repeated proof. So instead of trying to become everything overnight, start small. Pick one identity, one standard, one behavior, and reinforce it daily. For example, I am someone who builds every day. Simple, clear, actionable, and every day. You prove it, not perfectly, but consistently, and over time. That statement becomes truth. Because you've lived it. Now imagine this. You wake up, and instead of negotiating, you act. Not because you feel like it, but because it's who you are. You build, you refine, you improve day after day, and slowly your identity shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who wants to build. You become someone who builds. And that difference is everything. Because once you become that person, systems follow, results follow, growth follows. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, who do I believe I am right now? Is that identity helping me build or holding me back? What identity do I need to step into to create the life I want? Because those answers define your future, not your goals, not your plans, your identity. And in the next chapter, we're going to take this even further because once you become the person who builds, you must learn how to think like someone who scales. Because building one system is just the beginning. Scaling it is where everything changes. Chapter 14. Scaling is where systems become freedom. Building a system is powerful, but scaling it is where everything changes. Because a system that works gives you income, but a system that scales gives you freedom. And most people never reach that level. Not because they can't build, but because they don't understand how to expand. They stay small. They stay manual. They stay limited. And here's the truth. If your system cannot grow without your constant effort, it is not scalable. And if it's not scalable, it will always demand your time. Let's break this down. Scaling is not about doing more work. It's about increasing output. Without increasing effort at the same rate, that's the difference. Because if your income grows only when your effort grows, you are still trapped, just at a higher level, more money, same limitation, same dependency, same ceiling. But when your system scales, something shifts. Your effort stays similar, but your output increases. Your time stays fixed, but your results expand. And that's where leverage reaches its full power. Now let's go deeper. There are 3 core ways to scale any system: automation, distribution, replication. Automation means removing yourself from repetitive tasks. Anything you do more than once can eventually be systemized, simplified, automated, because repetition is a signal that something can run without you. And once it does, your time is freed, your energy is preserved. Your system becomes lighter, Now, distribution. This is about reach, because a system that solves a problem only creates value when people see it. So distribution amplifies your system. It puts it in front of more people, more users, more buyers, more opportunities. And in today's world, distribution is easier than ever because technology allows your system to reach far beyond your immediate environment. Globally, instantly, continuously. That's power. Now replication. This is where things multiply. Once a system works, you can duplicate its structure, apply it in different ways, different audiences, different formats, but the same core idea. And that's how one system becomes many, not by starting from zero, but by building on what already works. That's scaling. Now here's where most people get stuck. They try to scale too early, before the system works, before it's stable, before it's clear. And that creates problems because scaling amplifies everything. If your system is strong, scaling makes it stronger. If your system is weak, scaling makes it collapse faster. So the order matters. First, build, then refine, then stabilize, and only then scale. Because once your system is solid, scaling becomes natural. It becomes a process, not a struggle. Now let me give you a powerful shift. Stop asking, how can I make more money? Start asking, how can I make what I've already built reach more people with less effort? Because that's scaling, and that's where exponential growth begins. Now imagine this. You build a system. It works. It produces consistent results. Then you automate parts of it. It requires less of your time. Then you expand its reach. More people discover it, more people use it. Then you replicate it. Different versions, different directions, and suddenly your system is no longer small. It's growing, expanding, multiplying. And you're not working more, you're managing less. That's the shift. From effort to expansion. From control to design. From work to systems. Now here's something important. Scaling is not about complexity, it's about clarity. Because the clearer your system is, the easier it is to expand. The easier it is to automate. The easier it is to replicate. That's why simplicity matters so much. Because complexity blocks scale. Clarity enables it. Now let me give you a principle. If your system depends on you, it cannot scale. If your system runs without you, it can grow beyond you. That's the difference. That's the goal. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what have I built that works? What part of it still depends on me? What can I simplify, automate, or expand? Because those answers are your path to scaling, and scaling is your path to freedom. Now here's where we go next. Because building and scaling systems is powerful. But there is something that silently destroys people even after they succeed. Something that pulls them back. Something that resets everything. Lack of control over their mind. Because if your mind is unstable, your systems won't last. And in the next chapter, we're going to break that down. Because the strongest systems are built by people with the strongest internal control. Chapter 15. Control your mind, or lose everything you build. You can build systems. You can scale them. You can create income that flows without you, and still lose it all. Not because the system failed, but because you did. Because here's the truth most people don't realize. Your systems will only be as stable as your mind. If your thinking is reactive, your decisions will be inconsistent. If your emotions control you, your systems will suffer. If your focus breaks, your structure collapses, and everything you built starts to weaken. Let's go deeper. Success doesn't just require building, it requires maintaining, protecting, managing, and that requires mental control. Because once your systems start producing, new challenges appear, distractions increase, opportunities multiply. Pressure grows, and if your mind is not stable, you will start reacting, chasing new ideas, abandoning what works, overcomplicating what was simple, and slowly, you destroy your own system, not intentionally, but gradually. That's how most people fall, not from failure, from lack of control. Now here's the shift. You must train your mind to stay clear, focused, grounded, even when things are changing, even when things are growing, even when things feel uncertain. Because clarity is what protects your systems. Let's break this down. Your mind has two modes, reactive and intentional. Reactive means you respond to everything, every notification, every idea, every opportunity. You move without direction, you act without clarity, and your systems lose consistency. Intentional means you choose what matters, what doesn't, what deserves your energy. You act with direction, you move with clarity, and your systems stay strong. That's the difference. Now here's something important. Mental control is not about suppressing thoughts. It's about directing them, because your mind will always produce ideas, new opportunities, new directions, but not all of them matter. And if you follow every idea, you will never build anything fully. This is why focus matters even more after you succeed, because success creates noise, more options, more distractions, more decisions, and without control, you lose direction. Now let me give you a principle. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, because every new decision consumes energy, consumes focus, consumes time, and if you spread yourself too thin, your systems weaken, so you become selective. You protect your attention, you stay aligned with what works, and that's how you maintain growth. Now let's go deeper. Your emotions also matter, because building systems is not always exciting. There are slow phases, unclear phases, challenging phases. And if your emotions control your actions, you will stop during those moments. You will lose consistency. You will break momentum. But if your mind is trained, you continue regardless of how you feel. Just like it's often emphasized in mental discipline principles, you must act with clarity, not emotion, especially under pressure, because systems don't care about your mood. They care about your consistency. Now imagine this. Your system is growing. Results are coming. Opportunities are increasing. And instead of chasing everything, you stay focused. You refine what works. You ignore what doesn't align. You protect your direction. And because of that, your system becomes stronger, more stable, more powerful. That's mental control. Not forcing yourself, but guiding yourself. Now here's something powerful. The strongest builders are not the ones who do the most. They are the ones who stay the most consistent. And consistency is a result of control. Control over thoughts, control over actions, control over direction. That's what creates long-term success. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, when things get difficult, do I stay consistent or do I react? When new opportunities appear, do I stay focused or do I chase everything? When I feel tired, do I continue or do I stop? Because those answers reveal the strength of your mind, and your mind determines the strength of your systems. Now here's where we go next. Because once your mind is stable, you unlock something even more powerful: patience. Not passive patience, active patience. The kind that allows systems to grow without rushing them, without breaking them, without abandoning them too early. And in the next chapter, we're going to break that down, because patience is what turns good systems into unstoppable ones. Chapter 16. Patience is the multiplier most people ignore. We live in a world that rewards speed, fast results, fast money, fast growth. Everything is immediate. Everything is now. And because of that, most people have lost the ability to wait. Not passive waiting, not doing nothing, but active patience. The kind that builds, the kind that continues, the kind that trusts the process, even when results are not visible yet. And here's the truth you need to understand. Impatience doesn't just slow your progress, it destroys it. Because systems require time to mature. They require consistency. They require repetition. They require space to grow. And if you interrupt that process, you reset everything. Let's go deeper. Impatience shows up in subtle ways. You start something, and after a short time you think, this isn't working. I need something better. I should try something else. So you switch. New idea, new direction, new system, and you start again. But then the same thing happens. You don't see immediate results. You doubt. You switch again, and again, and again. And years pass without anything ever fully developing. That's the cost of impatience, not failure, but constant restarting. Now here's the shift. Success is not about starting more. It's about staying longer, because staying allows compounding to work. Staying allows systems to stabilize. Staying allows results to grow. And most people don't stay long enough. Just like it's often reflected in success principles, people don't fail because they lack ability, but because they don't stay focused long enough for results to appear. Now let's be clear. Patience does not mean doing nothing. It means continuing to build without needing immediate reward. It means trusting your system while improving it. It means staying committed even when progress feels slow. That's active patience, and it's powerful. Because while others are switching, you are compounding. While others are restarting, you are refining. While others are quitting, you are progressing. And that difference creates everything. Now let me give you a perspective. Every system has a delay, a gap between effort and result. And if you can't tolerate that gap, you will never experience the result, because you will quit right before it happens. That's the reality. Most people quit not because it didn't work, but because it hadn't worked yet. And that yet is where patience matters most. Now imagine this. You build a system. You stay consistent. You improve gradually. Weeks pass, months pass. At first, nothing seems to change. But you continue, you refine, you stay, and then something shifts. Results appear, small at first, then consistent, then growing, and suddenly everything you did starts to make sense. That's compounding. That's patience. That's how systems grow. But you only see it if you stay. Now here's something important. Patience is not blind. It's not ignoring reality. It's not staying stuck in something that clearly doesn't work. It's about giving something enough time to prove whether it works and improving it along the way. That's the balance. You don't abandon too early, and you don't stay without adjustment. You stay while refining. That's the key. Now let me give you a principle. If you're constantly starting over, you're not building, you're delaying. Because every restart resets your progress, breaks your momentum, destroys your compounding. So instead of chasing new beginnings, protect your current path, refine it, improve it, stay with it long enough to see results. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, where have I quit too early? What have I abandoned that could have worked if I stayed longer? Where am I being impatient instead of consistent? Because those answers reveal exactly where your growth has been interrupted. And once you see that, you can change it. You can decide to stay, to build, to let compounding work. Now here's where we go next. Because once you combine patience with discipline, with focus, with systems, something powerful happens. You start seeing results, real results. And that brings a new challenge, handling growth. Because growth changes everything, and if you're not prepared for it, it can overwhelm you. And in the next chapter, we're going to break that down. Because building systems is one thing, managing growth is another level entirely. Chapter 17. Growth will test you more than struggle ever did at the beginning. Everything is simple. You're building, you're focused, you're trying to make something work. There's pressure, but it's clear. You know what you need to do. You just need to build. But then something changes. Your system starts working. Results begin to appear. Opportunities increase, and suddenly you're no longer trying to start. You're trying to manage. And here's the truth most people don't expect. Growth creates new problems, and if you're not ready for them, it can destroy what you built. Because growth brings complexity, more decisions, more options, more pressure, and if you're not careful, you lose control. Let's go deeper. At the beginning, your biggest challenge is starting, but once you succeed, your biggest challenge becomes staying aligned. Because now there are distractions everywhere, new ideas, new directions, new opportunities, and all of them look good. All of them feel like progress, but not all of them are aligned, and that's where people lose their systems. They chase everything. They expand too fast. They say yes to everything, and slowly they dilute their focus. They weaken their structure. They break their consistency, and eventually, everything starts to fall apart, not because the system failed, but because they lost direction. Now here's the shift. Growth requires restraint, not just action. Restraint, the ability to say no, the ability to stay focused, the ability to protect what works. Because just because something is possible doesn't mean it's necessary. And every unnecessary move creates noise, and noise kills clarity. Now let's connect this to your systems. When your system starts growing, you will feel the urge to do more, expand faster, add more features, create more complexity. But remember what we learned. Simplicity scales, complexity breaks. So instead of adding more, you refine. You strengthen what already works. You optimize. You improve. Because strength is built through refinement, not constant expansion. Now here's something important. Growth also tests your discipline. Because when results come, it's easy to relax, easy to slow down, easy to lose the habits that built your system. And that's dangerous, because success without discipline doesn't last. Just like it's often emphasized in performance principles, consistency must remain even when results appear, not just when you're struggling. So you stay grounded. You continue the process. You protect your habits because those habits are what created your system, and they're what will sustain it. Now let's go deeper. Growth also brings pressure, more expectations, more responsibility, more uncertainty, and if your mind is not stable, you will react. You will make emotional decisions. You will rush. You will overcorrect. And that's how systems break. So you slow down, not in action, but in thinking. You become deliberate. You think clearly. You act intentionally because clarity is what keeps your system strong. Now imagine this. Your system is growing. Opportunities are increasing. But instead of chasing everything, you stay focused. You refine what works. You ignore distractions. You protect your structure. And because of that, your system becomes stronger, more stable, more scalable. That's how growth should look. Not chaotic, not overwhelming, but controlled, directed, intentional. Now let me give you a principle. Growth is not about doing more. It's about doing the right things at a larger scale, because doing more of the wrong things only creates bigger problems. But doing more of the right things creates exponential results. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, if my system started growing today, would I be ready to manage it? Would I stay focused or get distracted? Would I protect it or overload it? Because those answers determine whether your growth will last or collapse. Now here's where we go next. Because once you learn to handle growth, you unlock something powerful. Freedom. Not temporary freedom. Not moments of relief. But real freedom. The kind that comes from systems working without needing you constantly. And in the next chapter, we're going to break that down, because freedom is not about escaping work. It's about designing a life where work no longer controls you. Chapter 18. Freedom is designed, not discovered. Most people think freedom is something you find one day, somewhere, after enough success. They imagine a moment where everything changes, no pressure, no stress, no obligations, just freedom. But here's the truth. Freedom is not something you discover. It's something you design. And if you don't design it, you will never experience it. Because freedom does not come from working less. It comes from building systems that work without you. Let's go deeper. Most people chase income. They want more money, more earnings, more results, and they believe that more money will give them freedom. But that's not always true, because you can earn more and still have no time. You can grow income and still feel trapped. Why? Because your income still depends on you, your presence, your effort, your time. And if those are required, you're not free. You're just earning more inside the same system. Now here's the shift. Freedom comes when your income is no longer tied to your constant effort. That's it. That's the definition. Not luxury, not comfort, not status. Control. Control over your time. Control over your decisions. Control over your life. And that control comes from systems. Because systems continue, even when you pause, even when you rest, even when you step away. That's freedom. Now let's be clear. Freedom doesn't mean you stop working. It means you choose how you work. You decide when, you decide where, you decide how much. And that choice is everything, because without choice, you're reacting. With choice, you're living intentionally. Now imagine this. You wake up and your income is still flowing, not because you started working, but because something you built is still working. You don't rush. You don't react. You decide. What matters today? What do you want to build next? What deserves your energy? That's freedom, not escape, but control. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They chase freedom without building the structure that creates it. They want the outcome without the system, and that doesn't work because freedom is a result of leverage, discipline, focus, consistency, time invested correctly, all the things we've talked about. That's what creates it. Not luck, not shortcuts, not sudden success. Design. Now let's go deeper. Freedom is also layered. At first, it's small. A little more time, a little less pressure, a little more control. But as your systems grow, so does your freedom. More options, more flexibility, more independence, and eventually, you reach a point where your life is no longer controlled by necessity, but by choice. That's the goal. Now here's something important. Freedom requires responsibility because once you have it, you must manage it. You must decide how to use your time, how to grow your systems, how to continue building. Because without direction, freedom can become distraction, and distraction leads back to dependency. So you stay intentional. You continue building. You continue refining. Because freedom is not the end. It's the beginning of a new level. Now let me give you a principle. Don't chase freedom. Build systems and let freedom follow. Because chasing freedom without structure leads nowhere. But building systems creates it naturally. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what would freedom look like for me? Not in fantasy, but in reality. More time, less pressure, more control, and then ask, what system could I start building today? That moves me one step closer to that, because freedom is not far away. It's built, one system at a time. Now here's where we go next. Because once you understand freedom, you start thinking differently. You stop asking, how do I make money? And you start asking, how do I create value that lasts? Because value is the foundation of every system. And in the next chapter, we're going to break that down. Because if you don't understand value, you can build systems, but they won't sustain. And sustainability is what turns systems into legacy. Chapter 19. Value is the only thing that pays forever. Money is not the goal. That might sound strange at first, but stay with me. Because this is where everything becomes clear. Money is not created, it is exchanged. And what it's exchanged for is value. Every system that makes money is built on value, not effort, not time, not intention, value. If your system creates value, it will produce income. If it doesn't, it won't matter how hard you work. It won't sustain. Let's go deeper. Value is simple. It solves something, a problem, a need, a desire. It makes life easier, faster, clearer. That's why people pay. Not because something exists, but because it helps. And the more consistently your system delivers that help, the more consistently it produces income. Now here's the shift. Stop focusing on money. Start focusing on value. Because money follows value, always. Let me explain. If you chase money, you think short term. What can I sell? What can I make quickly? And that leads to fragile systems, unstable income, constant pressure. But if you focus on value, you think long term. What problem can I solve? Repeatedly. What can I build that actually helps people? And that leads to sustainable systems, consistent income, real growth. That's the difference. Now let's connect this to your systems. Every system you build must answer one question. What value does this create? and for whom? If you can't answer that clearly, the system will struggle, because clarity creates direction, and direction creates results. Now here's something important. Value is not about complexity, it's about usefulness. You don't need to create something complicated. You need to create something effective, something that works, something that solves, something that delivers. That's it. Because people don't pay for effort, they pay for outcomes. Now let's go deeper. There are different types of value: time-saving value, problem-solving value, educational value, emotional value. Each one matters. Each one can be turned into a system, and the more clearly you understand the value you provide, the stronger your system becomes. Because now, you're not guessing. You're building with purpose. Now here's where most people go wrong. They try to create value for everyone, and in doing that, they create value for no one. Because value must be specific, clear, targeted. You must know, who are you helping? What are you solving? Why does it matter? Because clarity is what makes your system effective. Now let's connect this to reality. Think about your own life. What do you pay for? Why do you choose one option over another? It's not random. It's based on value. What helps you more? What solves your problem better? What makes your life easier? That's what you choose, and that's what others do too. So if your system provides clear value, it will attract attention, it will create demand, it will generate income naturally. Now here's something powerful. Value compounds, just like everything else. The more value you create, the more trust you build. The more trust you build, the stronger your system becomes. And over time, your system doesn't just produce income, it creates reputation. And reputation amplifies everything. Now let me give you a principle. If your system creates real value, it will always have a place, because problems don't disappear, needs don't vanish, and solutions will always be needed. That's sustainability. That's longevity. That's how systems last. Now imagine this. You build something that genuinely helps people, not once, but repeatedly. They benefit, they return, they trust, and your system continues to grow, not through force, but through value. That's the strongest kind of system, because it's built on something real. Now, before we close, I want to leave you with this. If something in this audiobook resonated with you, don't just move on. Make it real. Take one idea, apply it, start building. And if you felt something shift while listening, make it a commitment, a personal contract, not with me, with yourself, that you will not let another year pass without building something that works for you. And if you're listening right now, take a moment, ask yourself, what system will I begin? And if you're ready, write it down, declare it, because clarity creates action, and action creates results. If this audiobook helped you see things differently, share it with someone who needs it, because most people are stuck, not because they lack effort, but because they lack direction, and direction can change everything. And if you want more like this, stay connected, not for motivation, but for consistency, because growth is not a one-time event. It's a process, and you're now part of it. Now remember this, as you move forward, you don't escape the system by working harder inside it. You escape it by building one that works for you. That's the difference. That's the decision. That's your next step. And it starts now.